What's up, Tim Moose here. Since I'm doing my top 10 favorite horror movies of each year, it's time for the 2002 turn. So here is my official top 10 favorite horror films of 2002. Because there were some pretty good horror films that year. Now, majority of these are more like family fare, psychological thriller, but they also clarify as horror. So, Alright, number 10 is Swim Fan. Now, people are saying like him is the first like sport horror movie and whatever. I would like to consider maybe Swim Fan kind of categorize as a sport horror movie as well. Swim Fan, of course, stars Jesse Bradford, Sherry Appleby, Jason Ritter, Erica Christensen, the kid who played the main guy from the Lethal Weapon TV show, who played Riggs, Clayne Crawford. He was also in this. It's about a high school swimmer on one night stand with a mysterious girl spirals into obsession and danger when she refuses to be ignored. This is obviously, a like a single white female type situation here. Swim Fan is a really decent one. It is uh the, the main girl's pretty nuts in this, trying to get everything she pretty much trying to get everything she can to meet with him and stuff. But yeah, the movie is really interesting. Crazy twist around. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I used to really get a kick out of this one. Number 9 is M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. More of a sci-fi realm than straight up horror, but it definitely has horror elements to it. Signs, of course, is about a former priest and his family who discovers crop circles in their cornfields, leading to an alien invasion here. Of course, it's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, Abigail Breslin. I really quite like Signs. It's definitely one of M. Night Shyamalan's best work here. Of course, I like the scary movie Dream Parody a little bit. But yeah, Signs is a really good one. Definitely has some good sci-fi elements. Crazy twist towards the end. I mean, it's a really decent film. And sadly, that was actually the last like good M. Night Shyamalan movie he did for quite some time. So that's unfortunate. All right, number 8 is Halloween Resurrection. I get a kick out of this movie every time I rewatch it. It's not a great film, but it is pretty fun. Where else can you get to see Busta Rhymes face off against Michael Myers? Come on. That's one of the most iconic moments in a horror franchise, in my opinion. Of course, here you got where Michael Myers returns to his childhood home as a group of college students broadcasts a live like internet show from inside and becomes his victims in awe. I know this got a lot of hate because they killed off Jamie Lee Curtis towards the beginning. Thank heavily we would get her come back for years later. Of course, you had Tyra Banks in this, Katie Sackhoff, the kid who played Kevin from American Pie, Thomas Ian Nicholas. He was also in this. I mean, I really had a fun time with it. Fun kills here. Of course, it was actually the last Michael Myers movie until like Rob Zombie rebooted it and on. Really, boy, Michael Myers has the most weirdest timeline ever. But Halloween Resurrection is more of a guilty pleasure of mine. Obviously, a follow up to Halloween H2O, and it's a really cool one. All right, number 7 is Resident Evil. Obviously, the first installment of the Resident Evil franchise, based on the popular Capcom game, starring Mila Jovovich, Michelle Rodriguez, Kyle Salmon. Where a military team enters a secret underground lab, where like a viral outbreak turns scientists into zombies here. And I really quite like Resident Evil. It definitely one of the best video game adaptations in my opinion. It's fun, entertaining. Mila Jovovich, I think, is great as Alice. Paul Thomas Anderson does such a good job. Obviously, we would get other Resident Evil movies down the lines, but the best will always be the 2002 one. Alright, number 6, we're of course getting another one of this here. Number 6 is 28 Days Later, directed by Danny Boyle, where a deadly virus wipes out most of Britain, and few survivors struggle to stay alive in a affected world. And Cillian Murphy, the movie that really put him on the map for most people. Brandon Gleeson was great. Naomi Harris. It is a really interesting like zombie outbreak film. It is really crazy at times. Murphy does such a good job here. It's such a good one there. And obviously, we just had 20 days later this past year. And of course, we got Bone Temple coming out. So there's that. All right, number 5 is a movie called May. May is, of course, directed by Lucky McKay, who I feel like is underrated in the horror business. You know, he did that little horror film a couple years back, All Cheerleaders Die. He also did, I'm trying to remember what else he did. He did that horror movie that I was mentioning in my 2011 list called The Woman. He is a very interesting filmmaker, in my opinion. This movie also stars Anna Faris. Always really cool to see Anna Faris in more of a serious horror movie rather than just because of course obviously she was coming off a scary movie at the time. So seeing her in like a horror movie where she's a little more serious rather than dipsy and comedic and all was interesting. You had Jeremy Sisto, who you might know from the first Wrong Turn movie. You might know him from Suburgatory, Law and Order. He's on those one of those FBI shows. He was in this. Angela Bettis was also in this too. It's about like a lonely young woman who with social difficulty becomes obsessed with creating the perfect friend, leading her on a down and blade path. There is a really messed up moment in this where like breaks, and you see lots of kiddos are going around it because like like they're trying to get after a dog. That's one of the most intense moments I've seen in a horror film. May is a really good one though. Angela Bettis is good. Jeremy Sisto, Anna Faris, a really good horror film that's well worth watching. Number 4 is more like a family horror film more than a straight up horror, but you know what? They're always trying to get after monsters and stuff, so I always consider horror. Number 4, Scooby Doo. Yes, Scooby Doo I consider to be horror. I mean, horror doesn't always have to revolve around, someone coming around, stabby stabby, whatever. Obviously, there's some really family horror movies out there too, like, Casper, Scooby Doo, and all. And I really consider Scooby Doo as a horror. Obviously horror for, because really Scooby Doo, I guess you could say, is really like a lot of kids will tell you, people who grew up with Scooby Doo will tell you their gateway to horror was either Scooby Doo or Courage the Cowardly Dog. Those are really the two gateway for horrors when you're a kid, and of course, obviously, they did the live action Scooby Doo. I love that live action Scooby Doo, man. Of course, Freddie Prinze Jr., and plus, you got horror actors in this too. You got Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar from I Know What You Did Last Summer, Matthew Lillard from Scream. You got Linda Cardellini, who was, of course, in La Llorona, and she's playing Jason's mom in the upcoming Crystal Lake series. I mean, so you got some horror icons in this as well. And I really always love the looks of the monsters here. Like the ghost in towards the beginning, I always love his his outfit. Love the monsters looks in this. And plus they're on Spooky Island. Come on, it doesn't get any horror like that, Scrappy Doo, I always like the reveal that Scrappy Doo is the villain in this. Spoiler for a movie that came out in 2002. But yeah, who doesn't love Scooby Doo? Like lots of great monsters. It is fun, entertaining. Well worth watching there. Alright, number 3 is Blade 2. Of course, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Of course, you got Wesley Snipes back as Blade, who's half human warrior, who joins forces with vampires to battle the new breed of mutant bloodsuckers here. And Blade 2 is a lot of fun. Chris Christopherson, Rob Perlman, Wesley Snipes. It's definitely better than the original, in my opinion. Wesley Snipes plays his part very well. Guillermo del Toro, I would love to see him come back to like a comic book genre one of these days. Obviously, he gave us like Hellboy as well. I mean, he's great when it comes to the horror genre here. All right, number 2 is Cabin Fever. Now, of course, Cabin Fever was like, I think this was actually the directorial debut by Eli Roth, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong there. But of course, this is where you got Ryder Strong, who you might know from Boy Meets World fame. So it's always funny seeing a star and the actor for Boy Meets World in a horror film like this. I always thought that was pretty cool. You also got Serena Vincent, who actually played Jenna Ortega's mother on that show Stuck in the Middle. This was one of her earliest films. Cabin Fever, of course, is about like a group of college friends who are vacationing in the woods are affected by a deadly flesh-eating virus. I believe Serena Vincent was also a Power Ranger, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember which Power Ranger she was in, but I remember she was like one of the Power Rangers then like beforehand. But so Cabin Fever is great. Definitely really interesting like virus type film. Now obviously it's very. I actually rewatched this movie during the pandemic because a movie about virus, you know. But yeah, Cabin Fever, I think is really good one. I mean, they should definitely do like another version, which hopefully it's better than the last one we had. But yeah, Cabin Fever, directed by Eli Roth, is such a good one. Very messed up here. Uh, Definitely, I always do love a good horror film about viruses because, well, we will go on to actually be involved in a pandemic here. So yeah, but anyway, and of course, my number one favorite horror film of that year is The Ring. Of course, a remake of the Japanese horror film called I think it was called Ringu. Ringo, I think it was called. Starring Naomi Watts as a journalist who investigates a mysterious videotape that causes anyone to watch it in 7 days. Should be honest, I got that line mostly from Scary Movie 3. An evil videotape. Like I could never really think of The Ring without thinking about Scary Movie 3. I met like every time I rewatch The Ring, I could never take this movie seriously anymore thanks to Scary Movie 3. And an evil videotape who kills anybody who watched it in 7 days. I mean, I love that Jeremy Piven scene. But yeah, The Ring obviously is still a really good one. Samara is definitely one of the most creepiest, like one of the creepiest characters there is. It is insane to believe she's also played by Daveed Chase, who of course voiced the main character in Spirited Away. And you know what else? Who else she voiced? That's right, Leo in Lilo and Stitch. So yeah, and I believe she actually had this and Lilo and Stitch in the same year, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty cool there. But yeah, The Ring is a really good one, directed by Gore Verbinski, who would go on to direct the Pirates of the Caribbean film, uh, Lone Ranger, whatever. But yeah, The Ring is a really good one. I mean, a horror movie about an evil videotape is something really interesting. Obviously, we would get other films in this franchise, like The Ring 2, Rings. I think there's that Ring versus The Grudge one. I think that was like the Japanese Ring versus The Grudge. Okay. I mean, there's still talks about another Ring. Who knows? I mean, I think it's really hard to do a new Ring movie because obviously, videotapes don't exist anymore. So yeah. But that's of course pretty much it there. Here is my quick rundown. Number 10, Swim Fan. 9 Signs. 8 Halloween Resurrection. 7 Resident Evil. 6 28 Days Later. 5 May. 4 Scooby Doo. 3 Blade 2. 2 Cabin Fever. And number 1 is The Ring. Now there's loads of other ones I could have added. Who remembers 8-Legged Freaks? Come on, with David Arquette, speaking of Scream. Who remembers Queen of the Den? Which sadly, that movie is really hard to really talk. I mean, the movie's not so great, but sadly, it's always hard to really look at Queen of the Den the same way because that was actually the last movie that Aaliyah starred in. Dahmer. That actually will be my honorable mention. Is Dahmer, the movie about Jeffrey Dahmer with Jeremy Renner? That's actually a pretty good one. That will actually be my honorable mention. Let's see. There is actually a horror film about Ted Bundy that came out that year too. Definitely not that. Hellraiser, Hell's Secret, that was not so good. Red Dragon, which is that Hannibal Lecter follow-up to Hannibal, that wasn't so great. 1 Hour Photo, I forgot 1 Hour Photo came out that year. Probably could have had that one. That's definitely Wishmaster, Witchcraft. I mean, so there's some pretty good ones I could have added. Anyway, let me ask you guys, what's some of your favorite horror films of the year 2002? Drop comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Tim signing.